5 on your Sunday. Time now for Keller at Large. Here's Jon Keller.
Good morning. Last Tuesday was Municipal Election Day across Massachusetts in many of our local communities. And our guest today, while not on the ballot, is well qualified to discuss some of the key issues that were at play in those elections and in our cities and towns. We welcome back Kim Driscoll, Mayor of Salem since 2005. Mayor, welcome.
Great to be here.
Always good to have you. Thanks for coming. So it seemed as if Tuesday was a good night for mayoral incumbents across the state. Why? Is it just because these are the days of wine and roses, or what's up?
I think there's a strong economy. There's a lot of activities happening in cities and towns, and we've got some really strong local leaders. What you're seeing in cities and towns that are doing well are people who are responsible for planning, delivery of daily services, also crafting those visions to meet the challenges we have. So there's some strong leadership.
Well, one of the biggest issues facing cities and towns these days, including Salem, is the lack of affordable housing. Just recently in Salem, the City Council failed to pass a measure that you backed that would have lifted restrictions on so-called in-law apartments.
Accessory dwelling units, right?
Right. They would have... right now, the law limits their use to family members or caregivers for the resident. This would have allowed people to, I guess, rent them out,
We
right?
call it as of right, right.
Yeah. What went wrong there?
You know, I think the challenges we have around housing are real, but it just signifies how difficult it is to get a zoning amendment adopted in a city or town. It requires a supermajority, which is, in our case, 8 out of 11 votes. We had that the first time. It slipped the second time.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, people were concerned, I think, who voted against it, that it was going to change the character of housing. And we know accessory dwelling units and in-laws are the best way to increase the amount of housing without increasing big footprints. So we're hopeful that we can refile that in January and have a chance to have it adopted and be a meaningful difference among many things we need to do to address affordable housing in our community.
Well, let's be candid. Is it NIMBYism?
I think there's some of that. I think there's folks who are concerned about density, concerned about overriding any zoning. You know, zoning was adopted in the 60s and the 70s. It's not perfect. Most of the best neighborhoods in Salem, the most sought-after neighborhoods, couldn't comply with current zoning, yet it becomes this Bible that people feel a real desire to hold on to. We need flexibility in a city like Salem, like most communities in historic New England, to allow new housing to be developed and to be smart about it, and smart growth principles. And ADUs or in-laws are part of a smart growth principle.
If the residents don't want to be flexible, you're not going to get flexibility.
Well, I think that's what elections are about, and trying to certainly build a group of folks who can understand the challenges we have around housing aren't going away.
Yeah.
If you want your young adult, your senior, or folks who are living in our community to be able to stay there, we have to address this housing challenge.
Are you going to come back with this?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be refiling it, really working hard to better understand issues or concerns. And we've had some changes on the council since in this last election.
Okay.
And we're hopeful that we can bring a consensus to it.
Was that an issue in the council races in Salem?
Absolutely.
And did people who had voted against this or failed to vote for it, did they suffer? Or
we did have one incumbent lose who did not support this.
Okay.
And it's a new council, you know, new people. I don't want to speak for them, but
right.
we feel like it's something that's worthwhile for us to pursue.
Well, of course, rent control is illegal in Massachusetts.
Correct.
But in some cities like Somerville, there's been a push to impose sort of rent stabilization measures, allowing communities to intervene against dramatic rent hikes, capping rent hikes for seniors. Do you support that?
I have some concern about rent control because I saw what took place when rent control was here.
Right.
People didn't make investments in their buildings. Right. There were folks sometimes in rent control units who really didn't need that benefit. So I think we need to be careful and cautious when we talk about rent stabilization policies. I also want to say folks who are creating condos or making major investments and just throwing out long-standing tenants, that doesn't feel right either. So there's got to be a middle ground to protect people who've been here a long time while also recognizing stymieing investment isn't a good policy for our communities either.
All right, on that note, let's take a quick break and we'll continue our conversation with the Mayor of Salem, Kim Driscoll, in just a moment. Stay with us.